It's David Willard. I'm collection manager of the bird division at the Field Museum. We're responsible for the daily maintenance of a collection of about 500,000 specimens of birds that date back to the middle of the 1800s and on up to things that came in this morning. So we're responsible for preparation of new specimens, for maintenance of the old ones, for getting them into the hands of researchers who need them. Among the different kinds of studies that are done in a museum like this are studies of relationships between different species and different families of birds, and often the shape of a bone may say more about that than one would be able to say just by looking at the bird on the outside. So some of the folks out there are getting birds ready to be made into skeletons, and so they're doing a very crude process of just essentially pulling skin and feathers off and leaving the carcass of the bird, which will then ultimately come into this room and be made into a skeleton. So this is what we call the bug room or the beetle room, and this is where we have these separate little colonies of beetles. The scientific name of the family is the Dermestidae, and the common name is scavenger beetle. This is something that you would find on a dead animal on the roadside, and is one of the main things in nature that would be helping to just turn over organic material as things die and get returned to the earth. So what we do is bring those carcasses in here, dry them out a little bit, and then put them in little baskets in these aquaria, and the beetles, the adults and larvae, feed on the meat and leave us the bones. And essentially, while we're doing work out there, these probably millions of beetles in here are basically eating away and doing work that otherwise would be almost impossible. This is a process that's been used since the time of Aristotle to produce skeletons, and this is probably the most commonly used technique for making skeletons in museums around the country. It's a very good process for this because they basically leave the bones intact, and if you catch it just right, the skeleton's pretty well articulated, and so other than just a little final cleanup at the sink out there, the skeleton is done. And once they're done, all we have to do is reach in and brush the beetles off, and they aren't interested in living flesh at all, so it's not like they're suddenly crawling on us. It's sort of a draw to this room to call them flesh-eating beetles, and they are flesh-eating, but if there would be a little less romantic if you said dead flesh-eating beetles, so, which is all they are interested in. They're on a permanent lunch break in there, but it certainly is something that is great to have this technique. I mean, it still requires a lot of work, so it's not like they serve you up the skeleton with no effort on our part, but it still is something that to go through the numbers that we go through, which is a few thousand a year of individual birds, it would be impossible almost without this.